or head. I see Julia.
I looked up and I freaking saw Jeremiah was in the room and I just screamed.
Score, right? Yes. Awesome.
Yes. You know what I was going to do? I was just going to start. I was going to turn my mic on and just say things that I would have thought would magnetize Jeremiah, like propulsion, like
right from the
magnets,
beginning,
and just start whispering elements, like maybe it would cause them to come in. So this is great.
Well, because last time we had Jeremiah on, he got through physical fields, symbols like the swastika, the Om, the Alpha, and what do you have for us this week, good Jeremiah, sir? You're working in the lab, we see, spinning away.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is my version of the Tavares magnetodynamic space drive. It's just a tiny model, only has a 3.5-inch disc on it. It's made out of this circuit board type of material, G6 phenolic. The stuff is really strong. So to tell you something interesting, I think most people in the audience are at least basically familiar with the principles of a gyroscope. Once you pull that ripcord and that thing is spinning, there's no counter torque against the frame except for the friction there because it's slowing down. But if you were to keep it at a constant RPM, if you had a motor inside and it, kept it at a constant RPM like this does, what would happen is if the motor is accelerating, spinning like this, the frame gets a counter force that moves in the opposite direction. So the motor pulls against it. And at some point, the RPMs of the rotor and the RPMs of the rest of the frame and the motor, they'll reach equilibrium. So they're no longer changing, no more acceleration. And at that point, it should come back to rest exactly where it started, because that is the basics of Newtonian's laws of motion. Equal and opposite forces, when everything is in balance, it should be exactly at the same spot that it started, because it's being held up by this extended 4-point pendulum. And that hangs across that truss bar there overhead. So the way I have it set up right now, I'll move my phone a bit to the right and to the left. You can see that there are two threads here. You see this first thread, this second thread, and so that's what's holding it up right now. And unfortunately, in this test, it's got two power wires on the bottom. So those power wires are unfortunately going to affect slightly the ability of this device to generate a linear force or pull in that direction. But what you'll see is that once I spin this thing up and we hit about 16 or so volts, the mark on this cup, this black mark here, and the mark on this cover, which is blocking the air currents and the flows so that we don't get the effects of aerodynamics on this thing, well, they're going to allow us to see if those two actually stay in the same position with each other, or if there's a genuine counter torque against free space or against the vacuum, proving that we're converting angular momentum into a linear force. So let's go ahead and turn that voltage up now.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I love the sound it makes, but it's probably noise canceling it out. So it's going to be...
Dude, that sounds like a Lamborghini.
So I'm using a wrist device that literally is a gyroscope. And the whole idea is to balance it, but it like works your wrists and arms out. And this is interesting to see this working in the same capacity.
I don't think I can hear you.
As I can show you here, you see how this front string is no longer in alignment with this back string all the way up to the top of the pendulum.
Yep.
Tension point. And so it's reached a stable RPM. It's not airflow blowing this thing around because we've covered that up with this shield. And even if I do move it, it won't change the fact that it's basically going to be pulling to that one side. So it's both farther away from the cup than it started in that direction, because that's the direction of its torque, and it's holding a permanent twist. Now I'm going to try to slowly decrease the RPMs, hopefully without it being into the cup, because now the force is going to go in the opposite direction. The gyroscopic precession that had been built up, forming the non-Newtonian third law violation force, is now going to pull back in the other direction as those spin precessions are shifted the opposite 90 degrees.
Now it's going spinning in the other direction.
Right, until we get down to the original starting RPM, at which point it will come to rest exactly where it started. But not until the RPM completely ceases. Even just this tiny little bit of deceleration that's happening now is too much to allow it to come to rest. It's got to come all the way down here. And as we can see, those two marks, they're once again aligned. So it was pulling really far, and now they're in alignment again with each other. And this is a space drive. It's a type of space drive. I'll be very shortly going over there to Mark's New Jersey lab, and we're going to be working together to build a stupidly powerful version of this that we predict could make as much as a pound of force.
That is absolutely epic news to hear, my friend. And you're going to have to, once you do that, can't wait till you start putting things like mercury and monatomics into this spinning mass.
Well, I got to be very careful about what I talk about regarding that.
Well, just the fact that it's spinning, I feel like there's so many, like, I'm sure people at, like, Alchemist had, like, a lot of profound results because they're looking at how, like, I talk about how it spins in a vortex, our cerebral spinal fluid and our heart, like, so seeing this, like, seeing this, and, like, it just reminds me of the divine technology that's inside of us, and I feel like studying that probably has profound invention qualities. Applying that.
The divine. There's always spinning going on in it, right?
Yeah, for our water needs it too to make it living, structured water. It needs to spin in a certain way.
It was the weird thing that I wanted to mention about this. All those drawings that I had showed on prior shows, and that entire crazy series of Alpha, the Omega, the swastika.
Yeah, what you showed in the last
that was right. You know where it came from? It came from playing with that thing. It was actually in the construction of that device that I experienced something that I can only describe as truly phenomenal.
So you made that. So Jeremiah, that's what you were talking. That's the device.
That again, that's why it's called the Tavares magnetodynamic space drive. Harold Tavares.
Magnetodynamic.
I replicated it in my own version, and I did something quite different than what he had done. The similarities between the two devices, what my version does and what his version does is I'm using a pinched, canceled magnetic field in the center, and he's using an expanded large magnetic field on the edge. So it's a little bit different in terms of the way that the fields are oriented, but ultimately the device does the same thing. They both take advantage of a weird interaction that is in fact impossible to, like I mentioned earlier, impossible to be classified under the limitations of the laws of thermodynamics or Newtonian laws of motion, because both of those things have a prerequisite. If you just read the definition, the prerequisites for them to be applicable as arguments against whether this drive could produce its own reactionless force are: 1, the laws of thermodynamics and Newton's laws of motion must be between things that are in the same frame of reference. And in this case, we have a rotating rotor, which is not in the same frame of reference as the stationary stator and the observer. And 2, they must be in a closed system. So in this case, in order for everything to be equal and opposite, the system would have to be closed. But it's not, because it's actually reacting against the local aether, that ZPF, and it will
like
be directly affect
float reaction.
It's becoming my advice to everyone. I was speaking to somebody that's extracting specific essential oils out of marijuana, and I was like, just put it in a spinning vortex. And then they designed something and made something and made it, and they were like, oh my God, Julia, you have no idea what you just unlocked. No idea what I just created.
Spin it. God's divine twister. Just spin it, baby.
Yeah, it's weird standing around this thing too, because you just start to feel better. It makes you happy. It's hard to describe, but I think
the sound of it though, Eve seems to harmonize, even just the sound.
This sound really.
And then I'm sure the field of it spinning and that changing. I love that sound.
It
reminds me of a Lamborghini. Dude, it reminds me of a Lamborghini, which makes me so sad because I go to a Lamborghini party, Christmas party every year. You know what they told me last Christmas party? They said, Julia, you're not going to hear that sound anymore. I said, what? I'm not going to be coming and hanging out with you guys anymore.
We don't
and
see
it's
a
going
Lamborghini for
electric
6 months of the year, let alone Christmas. I'm so jealous. I'm sorry.
No, but you're not. They're not going to sound like that anymore. What's the point of buying one then? Like it's the sound for me. Oh, but that's what it sounds like, Jeremiah. Because I've always been like, what is that sound? What is that frequency?
That's the sound of a very fast rise in fall time happening. My guess would be inside of a Lamborghini. That's just probably the intense power of its massive engine and the compression burst that you're hearing resonate the entire frame of the engine and probably consequently the body as well.
I want to know what frequency that is.
16 pistons.
Well, it depends on how hard you put the gas pedal. But in this case, I found that about 250 hertz works real well to produce a really nice feeling. Which, yeah, 250. So that's 250 hertz in this case. It's a pretty slow RPM. It turns out there's actually a dangerous frequency to run it too, where not only does it make way more noise, but it actually starts to make you feel a little bit sick to be around. And that will be at
the higher pitch
hertz, which is exactly, I think, 200, was that, or 250 RPMs, 5,000 hertz. Yeah, that's what it was. So yeah, 250 RPMs, 5,000 hertz. There are 12 magnets on this thing. Hope I'm getting my math right here.
Wait, is that the picture? Like after your presentation, when I hopped in, it had like 12, like the circular thing. That's what it is.
Yeah. Oh, that. I showed it, and that's that little disc.
Oh, because I got chills when I saw that thing. That thing's gonna do something profound. I don't know.
Oh man, it feels so weird to be around. It's wonderful. I think this thing is just so much fun. I built hundreds upon hundreds of different drives. I mean, hell, I'll turn my camera back on again. I mean, just take a look at the categories here. I mean, we're talking, displacement field drives, high voltage power supplies, an entire box filled with high voltage power supplies. Some of them going up to almost 200,000 volts. Just a box of them. Motors and drives, mechanical propulsion. It's reactionless, dielectrics, all kinds.
You have nice writing, Jeremiah, or is that Liminal's writing?
No, it's I perfected my writing because I used to do box storage. And then over here we've got
electrogravity. Of course, you have beautiful writing to go, like penmanship skills to boot.
You did more than perfected. Okay, can we just have a moment of silence for Jeremiah's writing capability? His penmanship. That's amazing.
Props to Jeremiah's.
I'm not lazy, which is not most of the time, but I pretty much 24/7. It's electrogravity. It's the fun stuff. The fun stuff is in the plasma chambers and all that other good things. Now I can't show you.
What do you think about him saying plasma is consciousness, Jeremiah?
Dude, it responds. You get your hand close to it, you immediately start to see it move, especially if you get it in a very, very low energy state.
People would just say that's a reaction, though, that it's not like consciousness.
It's not. Well, the thing is that it's not really consciousness per se. It's almost as if there seems to be some kind of
self-organization,
ability to react to the external environment that is part of the physical vacuum. So it's almost like the consciousness is simply already present in every point in space and time.
It's embodying it.
Right. And then the plasma is slightly higher energy than the surrounding space. So it responds to this thing that you would call that background consciousness, which is normally invisible.
Right. So it's showing form to something that we can't see with our eyes, but we sense.
Right. And the plasma gives it form.
Yeah. Lightning would do that too, maybe.
Yes.
Well, there is that story of the guy who got struck, like 12 times?
Mm-hmm.
Same guy. I think the guy actually struck
right,
through.
Like that's so statistically
friend of mine, Danny and
impossible.
Brinkley, was struck like 4 times and pronounced dead. And his story is pretty amazing.
So
look up Danny and Brinkley.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. Maybe lightning can respond to consciousness. I have no idea. I mean, I haven't.
Well, we are all electromagnetic, and we're receiving messages from our sun.
Definitely responds to lasers, and I don't recommend shooting shooting laser pointers at lightning.
Oh my gosh, I was trying to convince.
Thunder, oh my god, it's scary.
I have one of those as a lava lamp.
I showed that for the reference of if you really were curious about can plasma actually respond to consciousness, I recommend getting one of those things, because there's your easy to buy Spencer's gift shop kind of.
Before you came on, BurnEye we were talking about plasma consciousness through Tesla coil. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
I have one upstairs. Instead of a round one or one like this, mine's like the shape of a lava lamp, and man, it's very sensitive. Super sensitive lava lamp.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Tesla coils especially are going to be extra sensitive because their plasmas, especially the high frequency ones, those little kits that you can get on Amazon or eBay or
I bought one. I haven't built it yet though. I don't have the right tech to actually build it. But I have one of those where you can build your own.
It's super easy to put together, man. Just watch a 20-minute tutorial and you'll be done.
I think I gave it to my friend's son. I was like, here, enjoy. They're more tech than I am, so yeah.
It's a fun thing, but yeah, because it's all electric fields, they're going to be electrostatically affected by the surrounding objects, and so every single thing in the room is basically a capacitive terminal to that Tesla coil spark, and it's going to want to try to reach evenly towards all those points, and the ones that are closest will it'll reach more towards them. So if you get close enough to one of these high output, high frequency Tesla coils, sparks will start coming out of your finger, even if they're not coming out of the Tesla coil terminal itself, which is also kind of interesting because that runs around and dances over your finger, and it tickles, and if you let it get too hot, it'll burn your skin, but otherwise, it's kind of fun just to have a little lightning bolt shooting out of your fingers.
What was it?
Fritz Albert discovered light emanating from like fingertips or whatever and showed it.
St. Elmo's fire, I believe you may be referring to.
Look at this though. It's following my finger. The plasma follows. Ooh, on, ah.
Yeah, I mean it's expensive. It's purified, ionized. Yeah. Really give you some good capability. So hey,
a neon light, interesting.
Right, if you think you're powerful psychic and you have some plasma that's moving around, sit there and stick your fingers on the sides of your temples and look like somebody out of Men Who Stare at Ghosts, and try to move that plasma around Uri Geller style and have some fun with it. You just might see something move.
Interesting.
That's about the best advice I can give on that one, though. I'm not.
So we're
Jeremiah, your presentation was amazing.
That's like the light body symbology right there. Yeah,
absolutely.
Humans, I think we can do a lot
science
more than we think.
Yeah.
Should I finish the last two phases of my symbology?
Oh yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to jump in.
No, your interjection was well received. So we were talking about the sphere of the head being liquid,